Now I'd like to call upon Shri Ricky KG, 2 times Grammy Award winner, UNESCO MGIEP, Global Ambassador for Kindness, UNCCD, Land Ambassador, UNICEF Celebrity Supporter, and Ambassador for Earth Day Network to address the gathering.
Yelrigu namaskara. You can respond. You don't need to clap, you just need to respond. Yelrigu namaskara. Okay, thank you so much. Huge honor for me to be over here with people who have admired my entire life. So I'm so grateful that I'm on this stage with these great personalities. Thank you so much. And just to understand who I'm speaking to, could we just have a quick show of hands? How many of you are from startups or from businesses? Raise your hands. Okay, how many students over here? Raise your hands. Okay, how many people who have not called out yet? Like faculty and everybody else? Okay, fine, fantastic. So that's how I'm going to speak now. So basically, as I was introduced, I'm Ricky. I'm a musician. I'm an environmentalist, 2 pillars that have pretty much dictated my whole life and all of my life decisions. And I started off my musical career in 1999, my professional musical career, creating commercials for television and radio. You know, like you have these jingles and you have these musical commercials for television, radio. That's how I started off my career in 1999. And in a span of 13 years, I was pretty successful. In a span of 13 years, I did more than 3,500 commercials, pretty much for every single brand possible, whether it was Google, Microsoft, Airtel, Vodafone, Levi's, Lee, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, every brand and their competitor anywhere in the world, I was basically creating music for them. And then after doing this for 13 years, it sort of struck me that these big brands and these big enterprises, they've understood the power of music. They've understood the power of music so much so that they're ready to spend a few $1,000s on me to create a piece of music for them to sell something, because they're always trying to sell something. And not only that, they're ready to spend a few $1 million to actually air this music on television and radio. So they've understood that music is a really powerful language for communicating a message, and in their case, a message of sales. And not only that, for also retaining that message deep in the head of a listener. Like the songs that we learned during our childhood are songs we never forget. If there are any morals in those songs, those morals stick with us forever. Am I right? So that is when I decided, as a sudden stop, that I'm going to stop all forms of commercial music. And the only kind of music that I'm going to make is about the environment. It's about sustainability. It's about things that I feel strongly about, because I felt strongly about the environment. I felt that my music needs to be a reflection of that. So I stopped all forms of commercial music, and I decided that every piece of music that I'm going to make is about, in my own tiny, small capacity, to make this world a better place. And that's what started off a new journey of mine. Now, I traveled around the world after that. I won 2 Grammy Awards. I basically, became an ambassador with the United Nations. And through my numerous travels, in my naivety, I realized that in developing nations, especially in India, all our problems, and you startups and students will need to, get whatever you can about this one, what I'm talking about, is that in India and in developing nations, we can divide all of our problems into 2 major buckets. Now, what are these 2 major buckets? Survival problems and thriving problems. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, when it comes to the environment, it is always considered in developing nations to be a thriving problem. Because, of course, it is a survival problem and all of us know that, but it is considered and it's perceived as a thriving problem because people have far more immediate problems like poverty, hunger, education, water, sanitation, gender inequality. So these are the problems that are more pressing issues for people. Now, if one were to go to rural India and meet someone over there and tell them that, let's make a better world for our children and for our future generations, they're going to turn back and look at you and say, what about me? What about the problems that I am facing? And if you use the usual Western narratives, which is a one-size-fits-all approach of consume less of everything. You tell people consume less of everything. What about people who have very little to consume in the first place? So what we need to do is that we need to take control of our own narratives in India. That is extremely important when it comes to the environment. We need to sensitize ourselves. We all live in an urban bubble over here. We need to sensitize ourselves to the true problems of India. We need to travel around India and understand what are the true problems that especially rural India is facing. And that is how we need to build our businesses. That is how we need to go about our work. Now, when we need to also be very realistic in our approach. That's very important because everybody's got dreams, everybody's got aspirations. Development needs to be sustainable, but development still needs to go on. The word development itself has been hijacked by everybody, especially the West, because what is happening is that we've got a buzzword that the West has put upon us called sustainable development. Now, if you look at it, by nature of the word development itself, it has to be sustainable, right? Because development as a word itself needs to be sustainable. I mean, it needs to mean sustainable by nature of the word development itself. And it should not be against the environment, but development should always be in collaboration with the environment. But we've got a separate term called sustainable development because when we think about development, the only thing that comes to our mind is New York skylines and buildings and concretization, and we need to change that narrative. Now, talking about this, all of you would have heard in 2020, you would have seen this image which was really powerful of this female pregnant elephant in Kerala who died while she was standing in a water body in a lake. Do you all remember that? So for those of you who do not remember, basically, long story short, this female pregnant elephant, she walked out of the forest in search of food, and then she basically walked into an agricultural land. A farmer had some pineapple which was laden with explosives. She ate that. It ruined her mouth. She had to walk, and she wobbled all the way to a lake. She got into the lake. She died while she was standing up, this pregnant female elephant. And this image was spread all over the world, whether it was New York Times, whether it was BBC or Los Angeles Times, Washington Post. Everybody had this image on the front of their newspapers. It was a very powerful image, a very tear-jerking moment. And the knee-jerk reaction of everybody was that those farmers need to be punished, and they need to be punished. But the knee-jerk reaction is that the farmers need to be punished, they need to be hung upside down, they need to be killed, they need to be flogged, they need to go to jail for the rest of their lives. But if you think about it, about action and consequence, if you think about it, we city dwellers, we urban people, if we do not have electricity for 5 minutes, we are so inconvenienced, right? If we do not have electricity for 5 minutes. If a new iPhone comes out and there are not enough for everybody and the iPhone goes out of stock or the new OnePlus phone goes out of stock, we are like, why can't they make more of those OnePlus phones? Why can't they make more of those iPhones? Now, if you think about it, where is all that coal coming from for electricity? Where is all those metals for the iPhones and for electronic gadgets coming from? All that silica, manganese, lead, lithium, where is all that coming from? It's all coming from digging up those forests. And basically, it's our consumption patterns which is degrading these forests, our travel patterns which are causing us to build these roads and these railway lines through these forests. Because of this, the ecosystems of these elephants are degraded. They have no other solution but to walk out of the forest to get their food. And then they end up in an agricultural land, and these farmers, they have to make the ridiculous and the terrible decision and a punishable decision to actually, put explosives in the fruits to protect their livelihoods and to protect their families. And when this happens, basically what happens is the elephant dies, and we have to look inwards. We have to start looking inwards, and we have to understand that every single action of ours has got consequence, and we have to stop blaming other people. We just have to start looking more and more inwards. Now, all over the world, there are all our environmental issues can be put into 3 major buckets. Okay? Now, these are climate change. Briefly, everybody knows what climate change is. Unnatural amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Because of that, global temperatures rise, polar ice caps melt, and coastal areas and small island nations go underwater. Climate change is caused mainly by air pollution. Air pollution causes the deaths of more than 7 million people every single year all over the world. And out of the 7 million people, 600,000 are children. So what we need to do is that we need to have clear communication when it comes to climate change. Because right now, it's not communicated clear enough about how we can mitigate the effects of climate change or how urgent this particular situation is. All that we think about is a polar bear in the North or South Pole or polar ice caps melting. But climate change is a health problem if you look at it. Because if we change our narratives of climate change from an environmental issue to a health issue, and we communicate it strongly, saying that climate change causes asthma, it causes lung cancer to our loved ones, sometimes even to our children, then we will have a stronger buy-in to that. Second is basically plastics pollution. Everybody knows plastics was invented as a miracle material in the early 1900s as a non-biodegradable miracle material. And it was a miracle material because it was non-biodegradable. But we human beings somehow, during our journey of being humans, we decided that a non-biodegradable material could be disposable. which makes no sense at all. So that is why we need to work towards eliminating single-use plastics in our lives, and startups can be a very, very good route towards that. And lastly, I'm not going to speak too much about this, but about species extinction, deforestation, loss of ecosystems. Now, with all these problems, the biggest threat to us as a species, as a human species, as Mr. Gopal had mentioned, the biggest threat to us as a human species is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for governments, for NGOs, for intergovernmental bodies, for leaders, for politicians to make a difference, when the truth is that the only way we can bring about meaningful change is if we change ourselves and we change our behaviors. Everybody talks about changing the world, nobody talks about changing themselves, and that's not because we are some sort of evil people. It's because we have just not empowered ourselves to believe that the small, tiny, incremental changes that we make within our own lives actually make a difference. Like if I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or if I stop using fossil fuel energy, what difference will it make? That's what we think. And of course, it's very important for businesses and for startups to keep sustainability at the core of their businesses, because that's the only way we'll be able to achieve what we want to achieve and mitigate the effects of environmental degradation and climate change. Now, there was a study conducted by University College London, that is UCL, where they tried to put a figure to how much does it cost for individuals and businesses to put carbon in the atmosphere. How much does it cost me to put carbon in the atmosphere and pollute the atmosphere? How much does it cost businesses to pollute the atmosphere? And it was shocking that the result of this study was in the negative, which means that the way our systems work today, the way our legislation works today, we are actually getting paid to pollute the atmosphere. So until that negative amount comes to a positive where it costs us money to actually pollute the atmosphere, businesses are always going to bet against the environment. So how do we get businesses to be sustainable? How do we get you startups to be sustainable? That is where our Indian culture comes into play. You know, at the heart of our civilization, at the heart of our culture, at the heart of our traditions and spirituality is one particular Sanskrit phrase, which literally means the world is one family. I'm going to count to 3 and I want everybody to shout out that Sanskrit phrase, which literally means the world is one family. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. One person shouted it out. So, thank you so much. So, it's Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Now, the thing is that when we think about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, when we think about the world as one family, the only thing that comes to our mind is living in peace between different parts of the human species. Because again, somewhere along our journey of being humans, we've completely forgotten that we are not the only species on this planet. We are just one among millions and millions of species on this planet. So, the true meaning of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is living in peace and harmony, not just with us humans, but with all life, the forest, the wildlife. And not only that, we have to widen the circle and live in peace and harmony with the elements of nature, the water we drink, the air we breathe, the land we walk on. And only true coexistence basically is key to our survival as being human beings, and that is within our culture. So I would say that all you startups, everybody, take leadership, because if we as 1.3 billion Indians and a large diaspora all over the world are environmentally sustainable, if all of our businesses are environmentally sustainable, and if we keep environmental sustainability at the core of our businesses, then we're not only saving our country, but we're saving the world. So let's take leadership in this. Let's change the narrative and let India take the lead when it comes to the environment. Thank you.